Welcome to Ignite Intimacy, a podcast exploring intimacy, romantic relationships, sexuality, and everything that relates to these hot topics. We're going in. Are you ready? This is your host, Laura Aisha. Let's do this. Hello, Ignite Intimacy community. This is your host, Miss Laura Aisha, and this is the second recording I've recorded today, which is actually the second year anniversary of the podcast. We launched on August 1st, 2016. So we are on August 1st, 2018, 2 years in, 80 episodes, and thousands of listeners all around the globe. This is amazing. You will hear this episode in probably September, but just want to let you know that we are here recording on the anniversary, and it's so exciting. My original goal was 52 episodes. I was like, I'm going to do 52 episodes, and then, well, blew past 52, and now we're on to, 104. Right? So that would be double 52. So we're just like going with it. And it's because of the love and support of you, our audience, and my team. I've got an awesome team. David in Bosnia supports with editing. Lindsay in Quebec supports with all back end stuff. She actually is responsible for making sure the podcast gets out into the world. And so she is also making all the digital images and supporting me with copy. And so, yeah, our mini team here, making it happen, doing the work and getting it out to your hearts, minds, souls, bodies, and earbuds. So thank you so much for tuning in. Super excited to have Dr. Kat Meyer on the line with us. What is happening, Dr. Kat?
Yay! I was just going to say happy podcast birthday.
I know. And, I didn't even think about it, but I want to have a virtual party, for the podcast. So let's see what we can create with that this month for a two-year online birthday party, and do some live Q&A or something juicy like that.
Oh my God, I love it.
So Dr. Kat, you're a podcast host.
I am, yes, on Eat, Play, Sex podcast.
Ooh, that's awesome. And so tell us a little bit about your podcast.
So Eat, Play, Sex. So I am sex and relationship therapist over here in sunny California. And I talk to everybody. The podcast is everything related to nutrition, sexuality, relationships, playfulness, because I see our sexual health being impacted on so many levels. So people come to me for the therapy aspect of it and helping them navigate their relationships. How much the stress in relationships impacts our sexuality, or even just our self-worth, or how we see ourselves, the self-love, how we are able to be in our bodies. And then the nutritional aspect, our gut microbiome impacts our health, impacts our hormone production, the biome of our vulva, and the, all these intricacies of our body that are existing and impacting one another. If those aren't healthy, then how can we have a healthy sex life?
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. I want you all to go to iTunes and check it out. Eat, Play, Sex podcast on iTunes. So that sounds amazing. And you're up to a bunch of other incredible stuff as well. Tell us, just give us the
inside scoop on Kat's life.
Yes, I want the inside scoop. How did you get into this work? How did you become a licensed sex and relationship therapist? Give us the goods.
Oh my God, I will tell you all about myself. I went into, so I got into therapy, first of all, because of my own struggles with sexuality. Like growing up, I experienced sexual trauma, and then as a result, struggling with connection with people and struggling with relationships and just touch of my body in general. And it was in college that I decided like I didn't want to feel this way anymore. And I think it was the first experience was when I did yoga when I was 19. And I was like, oh my God, this is what it's like to be in my body. You know, this is what it's like to feel calm in my body, where I had felt so anxious and disconnected and just avoidant in this vessel that I have. And so that sparked my curiosity of the yoga philosophy. And so I dove in deep. I started teaching when I was 20 and just surrounding myself with all of the philosophy of it and the practice of it and the breath work and all of that. But then even then I realized that there was a lot missing still. And I still wasn't confident in relationships or in my own sexuality or in my body in general. And so I went to grad school to become a therapist and become a sex therapist to really understand it myself and reclaim that for myself. The interesting thing is that I went into it the very intellectual way. I learned about all the things and I could tell you anything about the penis and I could tell you anything about the vulva and like how it happened mechanically, but then the embodiment of it wasn't there. So my, studies continued and I started realizing how all of this could meld together. I started studying energy work and then bringing in trauma therapy and bringing in, studies of tantra and bringing in just everything. So my work and my teachings and what I do with the podcast or what I do with retreats or online programs and webinars are all related to an embodiment piece. So it's taking the intellectual piece of school and bringing it in alignment with, this embodiment piece
Awesome.
And the energy piece. And I see that being such a massive shift in creating lasting change.
Yeah. So like getting into the body and then exploring like the different ways that we contract and expand and like pleasure and pain and just anxiety, just all of the things that occur within our bodies as an experience, maybe not like some things are like show up as in a physical way. And then also just like the experience of, us inside of our bodies.
Oh, for sure. Oh my God. Our body is so intelligent. And that's one thing I teach people is when you can tune into, first, when you can calm your body down enough to tune into more of the subtle contractions and expansions, like our body is in a constant reaction to our external environment and our internal environment, whether that's unprocessed past traumas or, these thoughts that arise for us or interpretations or stories that are happening inside of us, our body's reacting. And so when we can tune into that, whether it's quieting ourselves or feeling into the body for that, it can tell us so much. And for many of us, we're disconnected from the body, or we don't know how to listen to it, or we distract ourselves because it's so uncomfortable to be in our bodies, or this, that, or the other. And right there, we've got our best tool.
I love that. Yeah. There's something about, I noticed that like my energy can get way out in front of my body. And when I notice that and I just take a moment to breathe and allow the energy to come back into my body, it's just like this gorgeous grounding force, that is beautiful. And it's like having that ability to self-soothe and self-ground is a really powerful thing to experience.
Absolutely. And I think in our society, we've really perpetuated this ungrounded, dissociated state, meaning we're disconnected from the body, whether we're in constant state of go, 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 or we're trying to produce so many things, or we're, in our headspace trying to figure out or analyze our actions or analyze somebody else's actions. Like all of these things are beneficial to a degree, but then when we're in that constant state, then we're not really here, and we're not in the body, and we're not interacting, we're not participating in this present moment. And so the grounding piece, I think, and this is what I teach my clients is, to one of my favorite tips. I tell them to relax their ass. And when they do that, they're like, I see what you're saying. Because it's an instant grounding. It's an instant release down. Whereas when we're clenching in our root chakra or our, pelvic floor muscles, we are pulling up the energy and it's very ungrounding, or it's like we're pulling everything upward.
Yes. Well, okay. So this is powerful stuff here. And you've got some really interesting stuff going on. So we're going to be diving into some juicy topics here today: breakups, bringing playfulness back into relationships, and then also navigating jealousy. So talk to us just a little bit about how you got into this present work that you do with individuals and groups. And then let's hear a bit about, your breakup app, and I want to get into some of that.
Yeah, I think all of this stemmed from my own not knowing where to go to receive information that most resonated with me. A lot of the books that I was reading when I was going to grad school seemed dated for their time, and it didn't really resonate with me and where I was at and my understanding of the world, how I saw the world, or how I, interacted with others. And so looking at how can I bring in the teachings that I've had, not only just in school, but also in more of my yoga background and energy background and that kind of thing, in a way to reach people in an accessible way too. Therapy is expensive, and I want to be able to, but we all deserve to be able to get the knowledge and the healing and to feel differently in our bodies. So that's why I do every single day. I write and I do podcasts and I do tons of free webinars and that kind of thing and videos to be able to help people still. So that's a major passion for mine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And where did this, so you shared with me that you created this breakup app, 21 days to move through a breakup. So what was the impetus to that?
So I was approached by Life You Love app, and they've been following my work for a while, and they enjoyed the perspective that I put around everything. And everything's very judgmental and open. And I believe in multiple realities coexist. And so it reduces our shame and blame game that we get into. So the 21 days to help with navigating or moving past a love that doesn't serve you, is the premise behind it is that breakups are hard. They are really hard and they can hurt. And yet at the same time, breakups can be this opportunity to really up-level and evolve ourselves as individuals so that we can then begin to create the exact love lives and personal lives that we've desired. So it's 21 days of me talking to you, helping you to shift your mindset every day. It's nice to have somebody just whisper in your ear and tell you, hey, today let's look at gratitude. Like, this relationship was not working for you. It made you so anxious. It made you come out of your center. It made you start to lose yourself and lose your senses. So let's look at, gratitude of what I learned here, how I've up-leveled myself, what I'm going to do differently, and how I'm going to empower myself.
That's awesome, because breakup can be such a catalyst for next level transformation.
Oh, for sure.
And I have this thought in my head, it's a wonder anybody ever breaks up, because humans tend to stay in relationships that aren't great for them, and some for a lifetime, or several years, and I know for me, some of the biggest growth I've experienced in my life was because of major, devastating heartbreak.
Yeah.
And not that I want, not that I'm creating that for the future. However, in the past, I can see what a powerful impact that breakup experience has had.
Yeah. Yeah. Breakups can be powerful because it creates so much discomfort that you have to make a choice. Do you continue to sit on that discomfort, or do you get up out of the chair and make a change? And here the breakup happens. So you literally have to make a change. You can suppress it. You can ignore it. You can victimize yourself and not, take away your own power, or you can step and be up and be like, hey, I'm going to use this material. I'm going to transmute this pain to the greatest lessons that I can for myself and move forward with it.
Yeah.
That isn't going to say it's not going to hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and so, what's an experience that you've had through breakup that has supported you and becoming more of who you actually are?
Yeah, I not too long ago had a breakup with my partner, and we ended it very beautifully, like very lovingly. And it was just like, hey, this just isn't alignment anymore. And it was interesting to think the synchronicities of this, because I had planned a trip to Thailand immediately after it. So I didn't stay here. I got on a plane and jetted off to Thailand for a month. And in that space, I was able to give myself like so much space to dive and attention to myself, to dive in and look at all the ways that weren't in alignment with me and in the relationship, to identify the parts of myself that I wasn't giving attention to, that I was maybe shifting out of alignment to meet the needs of the relationship and not necessarily myself. And I could really practice my sovereignty. So like being in Thailand, I traveled alone, and it was all about, what do I want? What do I need? What feels good for me, and not have to worry about having somebody else's needs in that moment. So I could tap into the voice that was going on inside and hear that again, and hear my body and without the stressors that were going on from the very end of the relationship. And really it was just the very end of it. That was the hard part, but that was really empowering. So I highly encourage everybody, set up something after your breakup, set up something that you can aspire to, that you can look forward to, like a trip. And it doesn't even have to be a big one like Thailand. In fact, the day after we broke up, I took a solo camping trip up north in Northern California. And that also provided me that same concept, coming back to things that I wanted to, coming back to nature and myself and my authentic voice.
Yeah, it's like shifting the state and shifting your state and just like shaking things up a bit and getting into a new environment.
Yeah. And it's not avoiding, it's not running away, because I definitely dropped in. I went into it.
Absolutely. Well, and so I'm just curious about what happens in relating and love when there's like amazing energy there and a lot of things in common and, just like great connection. And then somebody pulls away.
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah. Like let's talk about that. Cause I experienced this a little while back and it sucked,
Yeah.
like, and that's how I chose to experience it. Like I was like, sucks, and I was like, this is someone I felt like we could really like adventure and have some fun together and like explore life and just like a compadre and lover and friend. And so from the work that you do, what have you gathered around this?
Oh, girl, we could take this so many directions. I'm like fluttering with excitement right now. So yes, what you're experiencing is a common occurrence across the collective. And we can look at it in many frameworks because, because I don't know him, I don't know his background or anything. But first of all, we would look at things like attachment theory, how we allow ourselves to be intimate or allow ourselves to depend on another person. Biologically, it's to our benefit to create healthy, that's the key word, adult attachments with one another in our partnerships, because we thrive with being able to help one another out when we're less strong, on days that we're less strong or areas that we're less strong, and to be able to let somebody come in and be there with us. that's different than, creating a codependent identity, but there's nothing wrong with this interdependence that's going on, and it benefits us as well. And so we can see patterns of attachment being secure, meaning that we allow intimacy and dependency more easily to flow. We're not so much bothered by, the reactions of another person, knowing that it's got nothing really to do with us and our value as a human being. Then we can also have insecure attachments, and those can be things like avoidance, which means that somebody might get activated by closeness. As closeness or intimacy evolves between two people, they might get triggered and start doing deactivating behaviors to create the distance again. Or we might also see somebody with an anxious attachment that might perceive distancing happening. So they'll start engaging in behaviors of activating behaviors that would create the closeness again. So it's kind of like this pooling energy, or needing closeness or needing the certainty that the person's not going to go anywhere. So we can look at it like that. And then we would want to look at, what's his lifestyle growing up? What have been the key moments in his life that have contributed to the ability to be closeness, or the need for freedom, or the need of space, or, that kind of thing. But then we could also look at, I often utilize, and this one's a very empowering, and then to use the same thing for yourself. What kind of attachments do you develop? Do we find that we have even if it's on the subtle level, because a lot of times we can be like overtly the perfect partner, right? But on the subtle level, we may be putting off these feelings of insecurity or needing space or fear of losing ourselves. So that's where I bring in the model of, and again, all of these are theories, so none of us own the truth, but what I encourage people to do is find a model that you really resonate with to help you move forward in your growth.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my sister just mentioned this book to me, Insecure in Love. Are you familiar with this?
I am not, but I'm fascinated.
Yes. And it started to get into all those attachments.
Yeah.
And so my sister's been like, just as whenever I see her, and if I'm sharing about, the particular men who are in my space at the time, or other things, my daughter, stuff with whoever. And she has started to bring up this concept of attachments and like, oh, it sounds like that's insecure attachment, or, and this is what insecure attachment means. And I actually just ordered the book on Audible, so I'm going to start listening to it.
Oh, amazing.
And it sounds fascinating just to better understand who we are, where and how we're attached, and start to, I believe, like parent ourselves through those experiences. And like some people are just like, well, this is how I am. And I'm just, this is how I'm living my life, and then, other humans are like, well, I don't want to have that anymore. And I want to actually know when it's happening so that I can do something about it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's very empowering. Insight can be very empowering. And what's interesting, and what I see a lot though with the attachment theory, is people will identify themselves with these attachment styles and say, I am this. And that can be very limiting for us. We have to be careful of that. So I encourage people to say, I have these attachment tendencies, or I have these patterns of attachment. Instead of owning I'm avoidant, or I'm anxious, or I'm secure. And when we can do that, then we can start looking at the attachment needs that each of us have inherently. We all have 3 specific needs, and of course we have more, but 3 that really lend to compassion for ourselves. So when these needs aren't met, we will get activated and we will act in these ways. It makes sense. So then we can give ourselves a little compassion there and a little framework to communicate on. And those 3 needs are availability, intimacy, and security. So if those, for whatever reason, aren't being met, guaranteed one of you is going to be activated in that. And that's where some of these, feelings of jealousy, or some of these anxious feelings come, or where, why doesn't he text me after 4 days kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. You said availability and security and
Intimacy.
intimacy. Okay. So,
Hmm.
and then, so yeah. All right. So let's talk about it because there's this whole thing in my experience, I know, and I'm going to assume for many of us around like somebody doesn't reach out the next day or in a few days, and it's like I can just go down the rabbit hole about
Hmm.
that and make so much meaning about that about me when
Mm.
it may not have anything to do with me, you know? So, and then like I notice it really can trigger the insecurity piece.
Hmm. Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, our brain. So whenever our brain doesn't have all the pieces, it wants to fill in the gaps. And so it'll start making stories, and the stories aren't necessarily based in reality. It is, we perceive it as our reality, but it's not based in what's going on outside of here.
Yeah, yeah, like the brain is so yeah, so I'm doing a lot of work
Storytelling.
around this right now. Well, just in like identifying the stories and being out in the world with people and not up in my head.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I just shared this that I was listening to this woman speak and she was pointing to her head and she said, "This is a very dangerous neighborhood. You don't want to hang out in this neighborhood," as she's pointing at her brain, you know?
Yes.
And like, the brain will have us thinking all sorts of like insane
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
And,
Which which we also want to reframe as they aren't so insane because they come from somewhere. It's just stored in our mind, and these pieces are stimulating the memories from the past. So say like I experienced a trauma that had an orange in the trauma. If I see, so that's now stored in my brain. And if I see another instance that happens to have an orange, my brain will stimulate and say, hey, there might be danger here. So we want to,
mm-hmm.
and we don't want to negate what's coming up for ourselves. We just want to be able to, I always encourage the communication piece. So being able to bring up these, because there we create intimacy. So if I can bring up, hey, I'm feeling some of that fluttery jealousy, or I'm feeling that not included in what's going on here, or I'm not feeling considered here, then you're just allowing the person to see into you. Into me, you see. You're letting them see those vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
parts that creates closeness. Versus here, and here's what I see a lot, especially, well, with men and women, is that we try to process these things in our minds by ourselves, thinking, oh, well, I know this isn't a big deal, so deal with it in your own mind. Like, I know I'm projecting, I'm knowing this, but what you're doing is you are preventing an opportunity for intimacy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, and it's like I recently had this experience where I have, it's like this other person sees me, like sees right through my BS and is like calling me out on it. And I find myself like almost like frozen sometimes,
Yeah.
and just like, oh God, like, what do I do, say next? Like, and up in my head. And my commitment is to be like out in the world with people and like out of my
Hmm.
head and out in the world with people. And I'm glad that you brought that up. It's not that, I mean, certainly our brains can create some pretty lofty stories at
Hmm.
times. And there is something to be aware of there and to, pay attention to, because our brains are also brilliant machines and brilliant technology.
Hmm.
So I love my brain,
Yeah.
and I'm just developing a new relationship to it, what
Yeah.
it creates. And
To your brain and to
yeah.
every single part of you that exists in you. And I think that's the goal of it is, and that's another model I help people when they're navigating breakups or relationships is, we draw in the exact reflection of where we are at in our personal evolution in a partner. So, which can be a hard pill to swallow because we're like, well, that dude is, this, that, and the other, and he is abusive, or he's an asshole, or he's this. But then if we were to, use this model and look at ourselves, then we can find where subtly we aren't accepting ourselves. We can see subtly where we don't have maybe respect or value of ourselves to be putting up with that stuff. Or we may be, still harboring some unprocessed traumas in our past that created beliefs about ourselves to allow this type of dance to occur. So, and that strategy can be really empowering because we can't change anybody else. And why would we? Who cares if he's living his life like this? Because that's probably very uncomfortable to be living your life like that. But what we can do is refocus on our own growth instead of focusing on what they need to do and change and grow, but to show up and come into an acceptance of all these parts of ourselves,
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to what you were saying. When somebody sees you, like they really see you and they call you out and you get frozen, all of a sudden they just saw a part of you that maybe we haven't accepted. It might be our shadow part that we're like, oh, you're socially undesirable. I'm going to put you in my bag behind me and drag you. But when somebody sees that, and again, it depends on the context, but here's an opportunity for you to accept it. Accept that part of you. Yes, I can be really self-centered sometimes. Yes. Thank you for that reflection. Yes, you are right. I can be so spontaneous and flaky that it's hard for anybody to plan with me. And I love that part about myself. Or I accept that part.
Well, and so let's talk, because I know you just recently did a workshop on navigating jealousy in relationships. So that kind of ties in here with what we're talking about. So this is a big deal. I mean, this is something that this could make or break a relationship. And it also, I mean, it's one of those things that can pop up very quickly from out of nowhere.
Yeah. And I love to de-shame jealousy because it is a human emotion that we all have. And if we are to, again, see emotions and body sensations as body intelligence, as something to utilize as a tool, then we can really harness the energy, harness the power behind it to up-level ourselves in our relationships. Jealousy is this feeling of vulnerability that one of our needs isn't being met. It's more of a symptom. And it's almost like we can use it to help us understand what's missing, whether it's in ourselves or whether it's something that's missing in the relationship. We can use it as I think of, those mall maps where it says you are here and has a little red dot. And then you look for the store that you're trying to get to. It shows you, jealousy shows you are here and you're trying to get here because this is your goal. This is your intention for your relationship or for yourself. And this is how I need to get there. So it can be, if we sit with it before we react, before we act on the jealousy and we sit with it and we go into it, we can discover what that map is for ourselves. And on top of that, jealousy is a biological mechanism for us to be able to, mate protect. And it shows our values, we value our relationship, we value our partner. So the jealousy comes up, and what we inherently do is a lot of times we might start getting closer to the partner. We might put our arm around them, or we might start talking to them more or appreciating them more or showing up more. Now jealousy can be taken to the extreme, and it can be turned into, if we're unconsciously allowing it to take hold of our behaviors, then it can become totally disastrous, but not if it's tuned in and consciously used.
Yeah. Well, it's like heads up, it's like, oh, okay, there's something here. All right. So what am I, just unpacking that.
Right.
And yeah. And then I just, that suggestion of just be with it, go into it, go into the energy. Don't run away from it. Just feel like, oh, this is here. Okay. I'm going to sit with this and, even have a conversation with it. Hey, hi, jealousy.
What's up?
Going on? Yeah.
Yeah.
What's going on right now?
And
Mm-hmm.
jealousy may not even, people are like, oh my God, that's just jealous. You're just jealous. And as if it's diminishing what's occurring. But jealousy can also be a sign that something is wrong. It doesn't have to be something made up in our mind. It could be picking up on something that's actually occurring or something that we do need to step up and protect
Mm-hmm.
on too. So and that's where people always
Mm-hmm.
ask me, well, what's the difference between my fear and my intuition? How can I tell the difference? And I'm like, sometimes there is no difference between them. In fact, I would typically say there is no difference between the two of them because intuition is also based on your past experiences that are being stimulated in the moment, and the brain's just recalling and pulling those things out. And when we go into our intuition, when we go into these thoughts and feelings or the fears, then we can discover more easily what's authentic to us.
Mm. Well, so much of this is about authenticity, isn't it?
Yeah. And
And like, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say authenticity, being able to tune into ourselves so that we can create what it is that we want. But I think a lot of us have been conditioned to self-doubt or to look outward for other people's, ideas or notions on what's supposed to be appropriate or right or what's real, instead of listening to what we want or giving ourselves the space to figure out what we want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like creating it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we get to create what relationships look like to us. We get to create what our relationship is with ourselves, with community, and like we actually get to actually create that.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like what do we do with it? Like what do we actually really want? And this has been coming up in non-romantic relationship that I have with someone that I've spent my entire life with, literally. And it's like, okay, we could go down that path, or we could just look at what's going on right now, look at what's just happening, and what do we want to create? Like, 'cause we actually get to create this moment by moment.
Mm-hmm.
There, like nothing's set in stone here.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I think about illness.
I love that.
And
That's so empowering. It's like it's like design. It's like build a relationship, like build a bear. We're gonna build our own relationship how we want to see it, and not based on socially constructed ideas. I love that. Yes.
Well, everything that we're talking about right now are things that I can directly relate to and things that I've experienced in the last several weeks. And
Beautiful.
so, yeah, and it's like I noticed there's like some, it's like, oh, should I be sharing that? And that's the whole reason why I started this podcast, is to be just totally transparent and authentic
Yeah.
in my relating, so that like as a way for all of us create that space for all of us, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
and some feedback or reflections that I've received from people throughout my life is like could you like have more fun with like like what if like could you just be lighter with yourself around this, or like like be more playful
Uh-huh.
with this? Like I tend to get really serious about things,
Uh-huh.
especially when I'm like in air quotes called out or held to account. And then
Uh-huh.
I go into like the whole world of morality around it, and like the good and bad and the, and then learning now that like it's not about that. It's just like,
Right.
okay, so does this work? Does this actually
Mm-hmm.
work to create what I actually desire to create in my life? And then how can I have more fun with it all? Like how can I actually just like the pile of freaking work I've got, like projects upon text messages and emails and things to back up and game plans to stay on top of. And I mean, like, it's like I'm sitting here today, particularly just almost like week has been a little bit like experience of like deer in the headlights, like,
Mm-hmm.
whew, okay, just keep moving one thing to to the
Mm-hmm.
next. Like, and like none of this stuff is life or death, it's like,
Yeah. But we created
and
it. Yeah.
yeah, and
We
what am I
decided.
choosing? And how can I actually have more fun with this and move into a new frame of, reference around it so that, it's like, so that I'm not like spending my life behind a computer, shuffling papers,
Yeah. And I think the first step in that, and I like to say that I'm the queen of play. My superpower, if I had a superpower, which I do, is that I can get anybody to play with me.
I love that.
Yeah. I literally wear a tail, like a little foxtail and ears, just around my house when I'm cleaning, just because I like to. But yeah, that's real. So
I love that.
I tell people that life is not going to give you a break. I think a lot of us wait for life to give us a break, but it's not what life does for us. It's how we create that space for ourselves. And so we've created in our mind that we have to get all these things done by such and such a time, or we have to get all these things done in order to succeed or be happy or just get through the day. But what that does is it perpetuates non-participation with the present moment right there. And in the present moment, you have infinite potential of anything that you want to do with that time. And when we realize that, then we can choose. I also, I'm a recovering type A personality, and even most recently, here's a good example of the Thailand trip. Like, I'm a very busy woman myself, and convinced myself for years that taking a big month-long trip like that would not be, that I couldn't do it, that I couldn't afford it, that I couldn't do, the time. I couldn't afford the time. I couldn't do that. And then I realized, my power in that. And yes, actually I can do this, and watch me. I will. And I did it, and realizing that it was in the middle of many projects that I had going on. And yet I allowed myself permission to have those projects go a little bit slower. Let the projects be released later, and it's okay. Like, I'm not going to have lightning come out of the sky and strike me dead. It's not going to, kill me or anything like that. And even in my days, giving myself permission I always start my day with an embodiment practice. I love yoga. So I go to yoga, create the space in my body, create the space in my mind, create that hour and a half to do meditation and yoga. And then I start my day, and the expansiveness that I have created in my body will allow me to be more productive, but also be a lot more pleasant and feeling good for the rest of the day. And on top of that, giving myself permission, because it is very productive to have play in my day and play in my relationships. If you think about, if our relationships are all heavy processing all the time, and we're dropping into deep conversations about, my projections and your jealousy and what partner agreements were broken and all this, that, or the other, it makes the relationship heavy. But sometimes even if we have things that are going on and we have, things to work through, just being like, hey babe, tonight, let's just enjoy each other's presence. Let's not get into that. We both know it's there, but it's important for us to balance out the heaviness with the fun, playful lightness, because that is part of us too.
I love that. Yeah. And it is. And it's good to play, and it's good to lighten things up and laugh and just be silly, and and then what's possible from there? What kind of space gets created from there? So I'm hereby committing to laughing more, and laughing at myself more in a loving way, and just like being silly and having fun with it, and like making it messy, and then being like, okay, well, what's next? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And so this has been amazing, Dr. Kat. I'm so grateful for having you on the line with us. We have on some really good, powerful topics here, and I'm just
word vomit
so grateful
all over.
for who you. Yes, word
I'm
vomit
so glad.
everywhere. So how can people find you online?
So they can find me on sexloveyoga.com, and they can also follow me on Instagram by the same name, Sex Love Yoga, Facebook, YouTube as well, or my podcast, which is Eat, Play, Sex on iTunes, Spotify, and iHeartRadio.
Great. Okay, cool. So yeah, Eat, Play, Sex is a podcast, and then katmeyer.com or Instagram, Sex Love Yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Well, so much love to you. And I look forward to keeping in touch. And you heard it here, Ignite Intimacy Community. Check out Dr. Kat. She is a powerhouse in the realms of sex and intimacy, bringing people together. She's doing some incredible work in the world. And, you know, how can we all bring some playfulness into our love and our hearts and our lives and our relationships so that we have more pleasure, more connection, and more freedom? I love y'all so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And until we meet again, stay blessed. Love and blessings, and ciao for now.
Thanks for tuning in to another conversation on the Ignite Intimacy podcast hotline. We love that you choose to spend your time with us. Check us out at igniteintimacy.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes and leave us a review and a rating. It helps more people know about us. We love to hear from you. You can email us with questions, comments, or suggestions to hello@igniteintimacy.com. And tell your friends. Music was arranged by Jason Pfaff and Mike Corey, and this podcast is produced by yours truly, Laura Aisha. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one. In the meantime, let your light shine bright and ignite your intimacy.